A CEO once asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. Not because it was complicated, because it was honest. And here's what he said, that Vijay, I've done everything you teach. I've delegated, I've built the system, my team is making decisions without me, meetings happen, and I'm not in most of them. So tell me what exactly is my role now? And there was something in the way that he asked that told me this was not a process question. This was actually an identity question. He was not asking what to do. He was asking who he is if the business no longer needs him in the way it used to. I've thought about that, and since then I've thought about that particular question a lot. And I believe it is the most important question a CEO will ever face, because the answer determines whether the business grows beyond the founder or stays trapped inside their shadow forever. So what I want to do is today, I want to walk you through what I have learned about this question, not from a textbook, from sitting across hundreds of CEOs who have all reached that exact moment. And what I've found is that the CEOs who answer this question well build businesses that actually outlast them. The ones who cannot answer it become the ceiling of everything they created. So let me start with why this moment feels the way it does, because it is important to name what is happening emotionally before we talk about what to do practically. So when you build a business, your identity and the business are the same thing. And here's the thing, every decision went through you. Every problem was your problem. Every success was your success. The business was you, and you were the business. That fusion of identity is what gave you the energy to work 16 hours a day, to take risks nobody else would take, and to push through moments when any rational person would have walked away. But that same fusion of identity is what makes this transition so painful. Because when you build a system that works without you, when you delegate decisions and people stop asking for your approval, when meetings happen and they go well without you in the room, something inside you feels a loss. Not a business loss, a personal one. You feel less needed, less central, less important. And I want to tell you something that I think every CEO needs to hear. That feeling is not a sign that something is wrong. That feeling is a sign that the transition is working. The discomfort you feel when the business stops needing you in every decision is the exact same discomfort a parent feels when their child starts making good decisions on their own. And that doesn't mean that you have failed. It means you succeeded. The question is not whether to let go. You've already done that. The question is what to hold on to. What are the roles that only you can play? What is the work that only a CEO can do? And I believe that there are 5. And I want to walk you through each one, because I think once you see them clearly, the anxiety will dissolve and the purpose is going to return. So the first role, you are the architect of the system, not the operator of the system. Your job is no longer to run the business day to day. Your job is to design and maintain the system that runs the business. That means reviewing the decision rights framework quarterly, not making the decision yourself. That means auditing the accountability rhythm, not chasing individual commitments. That means looking at the leadership operating system from above 50,000 feet and asking, where are the gaps emerging? Where is the system weakening and what needs to be rebuilt? This is what I call the A and the T in the impact model that I have, which stands for accountability, and not inside the system doing the work. You are above the system ensuring it works. So that's the first role. The second role is you are the guardian of strategic clarity. Nobody else in the business has the perspective to hold that full strategic picture. Your leadership team sees their function. Your board sees the governance. Your clients see the service. Only you see all of it simultaneously. Your role is to ensure that the strategy is current, that priorities are genuinely aligned, and that every quarter the plan is recalibrated against reality, not rewritten, recalibrated. Because the world changes every 90 days. Your strategy must breathe with it. And you're the only person who can hold that particular lens. So the third role, you're the external face of the business. Relationships that only a CEO can open. Conversations that only a CEO can have. Strategic partnerships, major client relationships, industry positioning, public authority. Now, nobody on your leadership team can replace you in these conversations because these relationships are built on trust, credibility, and the weight of the person at the top. Every hour you spend in an internal operation meeting is an hour you did not spend on an external relationship that could unlock the next phase of growth. And here's the thing, the business needs you facing outward, not inward. So role number 4, you are the talent architect, not the HR function, the talent architect. You decide what kind of leaders the business needs for the next phase, not the current phase. You set the bar for what leadership looks like. You model the behavior you expect. And most importantly, you create the environment, the river, not the fishbowl, where great people can grow into the leaders the business will need in 3 to 5 years. And this is the koi fish principle which applies directly here. Your best people will only grow as big as the environment allows. You design the environment. That is a CEO's job. And role number 5, and in my opinion, this is the one that nobody talks about. You're actually the cultural thermostat, not the thermometer. The thermometer tells you the temperature. The thermostat sets it. When the business is under pressure, what's happening is the leadership team is going to look at you to understand how to respond. If you panic, they're going to panic. If you go quiet, they assume the worst. If you stay calm, clear, and purposeful, the system absorbs the pressure without breaking. So your emotional state sets the cultural temperature of the entire business. By the way, this is not a soft skill. That is the most powerful leadership lever you have. And it only works if you have the headspace to use it, which means you cannot be buried in operational decisions when the moment comes that requires you to lead from the front. 5 roles: architect of the system, guardian of strategic clarity, external face of the business, talent architect, and cultural thermostat. Every one of these is work that only you can do. Nobody else in the business can replace you in any of them. And together, they represent a job that is more demanding, more valuable, and more fulfilling than being in every meeting and approving every decision ever was. Now, let me be honest about why most CEOs resist this transition. Because I watched it happen and I fully understand deeply. The resistance is not rational. It is actually emotional, and it connects to something I work with in my diagnostic methodology, and I call it the scar tissue. It is one of the 5 human barriers that sit under the structural gaps in a leadership operating system. And the scar tissue comes from past experiences that created hesitation. And just as an example, it could be a hire that went wrong, a delegation that failed, a decision that someone else made which cost the business money. Those experiences actually leave marks, and those marks create a belief that says, if I let go, something will break. So the CEO agrees to delegate in principle, but will check every decision consistently. Agrees to empower the team, but overrides them when something feels risky. Agrees to step back, but cannot stop attending meetings where their presence is no longer needed. So the structural fix is the decision rights framework, the escalation criteria, the accountability rhythm. Those are essential, but without addressing the scar tissue itself, the CEO will resist the architecture they agreed to install. They will say yes and do no, not because they are dishonest, because the emotional barrier is stronger than the intellectual agreement. That is why my diagnostic addresses both layers, the structure as well as the mindset. Now, the architecture and the human barrier underneath, you cannot restructure your way out of a mindset problem. You cannot coach your way out of a structured problem. You will need both. So let me close with what actually changes when a CEO steps into the right seat, because this is the part that makes the transition worth it. When you stop being the operating system and start being the architect, 3 things are going to happen. First, your leadership team will start leading, not because you told them to, because the system gave them permission. The decisions get made. The accountability is going to hold. The execution is going to improve. Not because the people changed, because the system changed. Second, the business starts growing in ways it could not when you were the bottleneck as the CEO. Because the decisions that were waiting in your inbox for 3 weeks are now being made in 3 days. The opportunities that needed the CEO's attention are now being pursued by the team. The market is no longer waiting for one person to say yes. Third, and this is one that matters most, you get your life back. Not your time, but your life. The headspace to think strategically, the capacity to see what is coming next, the energy to be the leader your business needs instead of the administrator it currently depends on. There's something I want to share with you. A very successful CEO once told me he wished he had a life like mine. He was extremely wealthy. He ran a large manufacturing business. But you know what? He was exhausted, he was stretched and trapped in every decision. He didn't need more money. He needed the 5 roles I just described. He needed someone to show him that the most valuable thing he could do for his business was to stop running it and start architecting it. That is the transition, and it starts with a 3-week diagnostic that shows you where the gaps are, what they cost, and what the system needs to look like when it works without you at the center of every decision. So if you want to test where you sit in the transition, then I've got this CEO scorecard. It takes only 60 seconds, tests all 5 dimensions of the leadership operating system. It's free, and I'll leave the link in the description below. Or you could take up the Gap Unlock Questionnaire at vijay.com. 12 questions, 3 minutes, and I personally review every response, and I'll also leave the link below. Or if you are ready for a full conversation, book a Gap Unlock session. 30 minutes. Again, it's free, no pitch, just clarity on where the trapped value sits and whether the diagnostic is the right next step. Again, link in the description below. I'm Vijay Mistri, clarity first, impact fast. I'll see you in the next one.